Chapter 118. The candidate who landed the punch was dumbfounded. As he looked at the faint and almost invisible dent, his face, which was full of confidence a moment ago, turned a little stiff. How could this be? The candidate widened his eyes as he looked at the dent, which was at most the thickness of a leaf, repair itself bit by bit. The whole slate returned to its initial state before his eyes as though he had not touched it at all before. This slate. Next, the middle-aged man directly ended the candidate's assessment without giving him any time to struggle. The stiff-faced candidate was instantly like a defeated rooster as he left dejectedly. It shouldn't be. No matter how bad, a punch from a person with an orange spirit root should be able to break such a thin piece of stone. How can it be? Discussions over the strangeness of the stone slate started amongst the candidates. This seemingly simple third segment appeared to be completely different from what they thought. Yunshu's eyes swept over that stone slate, and a bright light glistened in his eyes suddenly after thinking for a while. This is the invasive stone. The invasive stone was an extremely rare mineral. Although it looked like there was no difference from normal stones, this type of stone possessed ductility that normal ores did not. It was completely different from the other stones that could be broken easily and was, instead, extremely ductile. If one used only their strength to hit it, all the strength would be resolved by the invasive stone, and there would not be a single bit of damage on it. The candidates, who thought it was merely an easily broken stone slate, felt dark clouds looming over them upon hearing, invasive stone. If one had no understanding of the fist intent for a long period of time, it would be difficult to punch a hole in this thing even if one were to punch it for 10 days and nights straight. The group of people was about to cry. It was all because they were too naive to see Xianling's sex trap. After knowing that it was the invasive stone, the subsequent candidates did not dare to use pure force to hit it. However, they were all quite young, and even if they practiced martial arts from young, they still had a very limited understanding with regards to the fist intent. Moreover, Xianling's sect was famous for its sword faction, and most of the candidates were talented in swordsmanship. As for fist intent, they really did not know much. Candidates went forward one after another. Most only managed to make a faint dent on the invasive stone like the first candidate, while others who were slightly better were able to make a dent as deep as half a finger. Lu Xiaowen was relatively outstanding in this segment. With a punch, he almost broke the invasive stone and even spread his strength, shattering dents all over. Streaks of tiny cracks appeared on the ever-ductile invasive stone for the first time. The fist faction elder saw the scene through the water-moon mirror, and praise could be seen in his eyes. This Lu Xiaowen may have come into contact with boxing before. The formidable Heavens Royals have always spent time on training martial arts, Elder Lin said. At the location of assessment, Lu Xiaowen was satisfied as he looked at the result of his punch and retreated to a side. As this segment was the last assessment, all the candidates had not left and only retreated to a side. They would leave once all candidates finished their assessment. Lu Xiaowen stood at a side with his eyes fixed on Yunshu, who went up after him. After Yunshu hit the invasive stone, a deep dent was formed, but not a single crack appeared. Lu Xiaowen saw this, and a proud expression finally appeared in his eyes. Chapter 119. Simply based on boxing skills, Lu Xiaowen is slightly better than Yunshu, said the fist faction elder as he observed carefully. Yunshu's swordsmanship is better than Lu Xiaowen's, Elder Lin said. However, both of them have pretty strong foundations and also green spirit roots. I believe that once they enter the sect, they will be to our liking with a little more training. Elder Lin said assertively, implying that he had already approved of Lu Xiaowen and Yunshu passing the entrance assessment. The other elders did not have much to say about this, as they were optimistic about those two people as well. Only Yi Qingtang is left. Through the water-moon mirror, the herbal faction elders saw Yi Qingtang walking towards the invasive stone step by step. I wonder how she will do this time, Elder Qin said as he looked at Enchanting with a complicated expression. In the previous 2 segments, Enchanting steadily won against everyone. If her spirit root were just a little better, she would be able to pass the entrance assessment even if her results in the 3rd segment were not good. However, Elder Lin glanced at Elder Qin with sarcasm filled in his eyes. Even he was surprised that Enchanting could pass the previous 2 segments successfully and obtain stunning results. However, Enchanting was at most 15, and her spirit root was extremely inferior. Even if she trained hard, she would not be proficient in everything. As long as Enchanting does not pass the 3rd segment, Xianling's sect would definitely not let her enter the sect. No matter how regretful Elder Qin would be, it was still pointless. At this point, not only the 4 faction elders' attention was focused on Enchanting, even the surrounding candidates looked at the tiny figure one after another. Once Enchanting finished this segment of the assessment, the sect assessment would end, and they would know very quickly whether they were qualified to enter Xianling's sect. Enchanting was slightly pale, but it was not because of the invasive stone. It was only because she used too much energy in the absolute kill sword array a while ago, thus, she looked frail at that point in time. Looking at the dark, black invasive stone before her, there was not a slight hint of emotion in Enchanting's eyes. She stood there quietly and did not hit it immediately. Instead, she took a deep breath and closed her eyes slowly in her mind. Memories from her previous life flashed across scene by scene. Suddenly, Enchanting opened her eyes, and a sharp light shone in her clear, black orbs. The energy around her whole body flowed and gathered in her left fist. This slight change shocked the candidates around her. They could faintly sense that a strong aura was being emitted from Enchanting's body. This aura was simply not what a person with a red spirit root could possess. Just when everyone was astonished over Enchanting's action, Enchanting planted her feet firmly on the ground, and the fist which contained all the strength was suddenly hit against the ever-ductile invasive stone. Like a passing breeze. There was not a slight sound in the huge venue. Everyone's eyes were focused on Enchanting's fist which landed on the invasive stone. Below that fair fist, the invasive stone was not at all damaged, and there was not even the faintest dent. Ha! Someone in the crowd suddenly let out a mocking laugh. Suddenly, small sounds rang. The middle-aged man who was in charge of the assessment was taken aback as well. Perhaps it was because Enchanting's performance was too remarkable in the previous 2 assessments that he unconsciously thought that Enchanting would definitely perform well in the 3rd segment. This thought had never disappeared even when he saw Enchanting directing her energy. Yet, unexpectedly. Chapter 120. Not only was Enchanting not outstanding, but she also ended up in such an ugly position instead. Looking at the perfectly flawless invasive stone, the middle-aged man could not help but sigh. Enchanting was already placed at the bottom in the 3rd segment. With such results, it would be impossible for her to enter Xianling's sect with a red spirit root. The assessment has ended. All candidates are to move to the entrance of the sect. The results will be announced in a while, said the middle-aged man without emotion as he brushed away the regret in his heart. Enchanting stood before the invasive stone with a complicated expression, causing one to not understand what was going on. Upon seeing such an outcome, Lu Xiaowen was already all sneers as he knew that there was no chance for Enchanting to enter the Xianling sect with such results. Lucky that he did not need to be bothered about her anymore. This kind of person was simply not worth his time and energy at all. Candidates left successively, but Enchanting stood before the invasive stone without moving a step. Looking at the pale face, the middle-aged man could not bear it, but he knew the sect's strictness. While it was regretful, there was already no way to save the situation. Miss Yi, should we leave? Yunshu walked forward and looked at Yi Qingtang's side profile worriedly. Yi Qingtang suddenly returned to her senses, and after taking a final look at the invasive stone, she turned around and left with Yunshu. Looking at the two walking away, the middle-aged man shook his head regretfully. In the sect, the four faction elders all had weird expressions upon witnessing the sight. Elder Lin sat on a chair and lifted his chin slightly as he looked at Elder Qin with disdain and sarcasm. Elder Qin had a slightly ugly expression but did not say anything. Seeing this, the Fist faction elder passed a message through the psychic tablet to the middle-aged man in charge of the assessment. The assessment has ended. Bring the invasive stone down first. The Fist faction was in charge of this segment, and the invasive stone was normally used by the Fist faction disciples for training. Now that the assessment ended, he would obviously want to bring it back. The middle-aged man heard the message and, without thinking anything else, brought the hanging invasive stone down as ordered. However, just when the middle-aged man took the invasive stone down, there was suddenly a crisp sound coming from the stone pillar which the invasive stone was originally hung on. The middle-aged man instinctively looked up, and what lay before his eyes stunned him there and then as though he was struck by lightning. Tiny cracks appeared on the strong and huge stone pillar right in front of him. From where the invasive stone was hung, the tiny cracks stretched to the rest of the stone pillar rapidly as if they were fiery sparks. In just the blink of an eye, that huge stone pillar split open before his eyes, and tiny cracks directly dismembered the entire stone pillar. Suddenly, countless lumps of gravel fell, and the entire stone pillar collapsed in a moment with a loud bang. The scene left the middle-aged man completely dumbfounded. The invasive stone was extremely ductile, but the stone pillar was made from white corundum. Even knives and guns would not be able to damage it easily, much less the force of one's limbs. However, it actually turned into a lump of gravel right before his eyes. The candidates, who had already started talking about the assessment, as well as the four faction elders through the water-moon mirror, were attracted over by the loud roar. When they turned around and saw the scattered mess, astonishment was written all over the four elders' faces. Chapter 121, What is going on? The herbal faction elder was a little dumbfounded. This white corundum was extremely hard. How could it crack just like this? The other elders also had a look of confusion. Only the Fist faction elder seemed to have thought of something, as he suddenly stood up and said, Invisible Force. Yi Qingtang actually knows the invisible force technique. The invisible force was one of the more profound fist techniques amongst all the fist arts and was similar to the hitting the cattle from across the mountain technique. However, it was very difficult to see anything strange when one punched. This type of fist technique would not bring any damage to the object being punched, but the fist's force will be transferred backward from the first object that was hit. If there were no objects or living beings backing the first object from behind, then the punch would directly crush the core of the first object. Previously, the Fist faction elder thought that Yi Qingtang really did not know any fist arts and did not use enough force, which was why there was no trace of damage on the invasive stone. Seeing things now, however, he had thought wrong. On usual assessments, there was a certain distance between the invasive stone and the white corundum, but this time, he specially ordered his disciples to stick the invasive stone against the white corundum without leaving any gap before the third segment started in order to prevent an accident similar to that in the sword array from happening. Which also meant, if it was on a normal day, Yi Qingtang's punch would definitely crush the entire invasive stone from the inside. Unexpectedly, the slight adjustment made by the Fist faction elder made the white corundum pillar bear all the force from Yi Qingtang's punch. At that moment, the Fist faction elder's expression changed rapidly. Under the constant questioning of other elders, he said the reason. After the elders heard the explanation, the smile on Elder Lin's face fell apart while a smile slowly formed on Elder Qin's face. I really did not expect Enchanting to have such abilities. Elder Qin praised Enchanting openly with no intention of concealing it. The Fist Faction Elder laughed bitterly as well. This invisible force technique does not use the spirit root's power, and it can amplify one's force to the extreme. It is indeed very suitable for her to use, however, it is difficult to train, and there would be barely any success with less than 10 years of training. Enchanting is only 15. Could it be that she started training the invisible force technique ever since she was 5 years old? Guesses filled the few elders' minds as they saw Enchanting's stunning performance. It could be. Previously, when the grade of Enchanting's spirit root was revealed, I thought it was strange. Musu knows the sect's rules, and if he really recommended a red spirit root person here, it might not be a good thing for him. After all, we will only give one's chance for assessment. If the person Musu recommended doesn't pass the assessment, it will not look good on him as well. Elder Qin thought for a while and continued. It must be that Enchanting knows her spirit root is not good enough and, thus, painstakingly trained other things. Musu realized this and made an exception to recommend her to our sect. All the elders found Elder Qin's words logical. However, they would need to make a change to the issue that they discussed a while ago. Enchanting ranked first in all 3 segments of the assessment. Even if she has a red spirit root, we should still give a chance to such a skilled youth like her. The Fist Faction Elder was also in approval of Enchanting's mastery of the invisible force technique and, naturally, did not object. Similarly, the Herbal Faction Elder was amiable and did not object. The only elder who had not expressed his view was Elder Lin, who had always been on opposing ends with Elder Qin. Chapter 122. Outside the main entrance of Xianling's sect stood hundreds of candidates. At that instant, everyone could not help but become nervous. The 3 segments of assessment for the Xianling sect revolved around the array, sword and fist factions, respectively. The other herbal faction was not what candidates could participate in. The results of the 3 segments decided whether they were able to step into Xianling sect's main entrance today and become a sect disciple. Once they entered the sect, they would no longer be the same as ordinary people. Regardless of the sect's halo or the rare treasures in the sect, both were full of spirit energy, and this was a very appealing attraction for ambitious youth like them. If they were able to enter the sect, not just them, but the entire family clan would be proud of the fact. Time passed, and everyone seemed uneasy. Only 3 people were calm. Lu Xiuan and Yun Shu's results were outstanding in all 3 segments, and their spirit roots were excellent, thus, they had nothing to be worried about. The only remaining person was Enchanting. At that moment, Enchanting stood aside with her eyes looked down. She was confused as to why she was not able to crush the invasive stone with her punch just now. In other candidates' eyes, her silence was a display of her despair. Her spirit root was the most inferior, and that had already become her fatal point. Although other candidates did not see Enchanting's results in the previous 2 segments of the assessment, it should be extremely terrible when estimating according to the duration of her assessment. Moreover, in the 3rd segment, Enchanting did not even leave a trace of damage on the invasive stone with her punch. Even if the results were not out, they were aware. Enchanting did not have the slightest chance of entering the sect. There was no shortage of people gloating at her misfortune. Previously, when Enchanting was the first to step on the path to heaven, they were already in a bad mood as they were outshone by someone with a red spirit root. Looking at Enchanting's miserable state now, they were proud to be superior to her. However, most of the candidates did not pay much attention to Enchanting and were more preoccupied with their own results. Yun Shu stood beside Enchanting all along. There were a few times where he wanted to comfort Enchanting yet felt that not saying anything and giving silence was the best choice. Brother Yun, what do you think will be the results of this assessment? Lu Xiuwen walked up and stared at Yun Shu, who he believed was his only competitor, without looking at Enchanting at all. The results are not out yet. It is simply the sect's judgment, Yun Shu said without emotion. Lu Xiuwen and he did not share the same values from the start, and, thus, he naturally did not want to speak much. The sect's judgment is, of course, important, but Brother Yun should be clear whether you and I will be able to enter the sect. Since you already have an idea, why do you still need to waste your time? From now on, some people will be completely different from you and me. Lu Xiuwen did not mention anything about Enchanting, but every word he said was directed against her. Yun Shu frowned slightly. Lu Xiuwen chuckled lightly and looked at Enchanting. Enchanting, I remember very clearly the words you made me remember a while ago. I said if you could enter Xianling's sect, won't I be a useless piece of trash? Now, it is enough to prove that my words weren't wrong, isn't it? Lu Xiuwen sneered. Enchanting swept her eyes across Lu Xiuwen, and a seeming smile played on her lips. Whether it is right or wrong, it is still too early to decide now. Chapter 123, Why is it still too early? Lu Xiuwen scoffed as he lifted his chin and glanced over at Enchanting with despise. Perhaps, someone has no self-awareness and is still struggling hard when death is at hand. Enchanting did not bother with Lu Xiuwen's ridicule anymore and stood there silently, waiting for the moment when the results were released. As for Lu Xiuwen, he was unwilling to waste any more saliva on someone with no qualification to enter the sect. After taking a look at her, he stood aside, only wanting to see the moment when Enchanting's hopes were dashed. Her expression would be so satisfying to watch. Not long later, the middle-aged man who was in charge of the assessment appeared in front of them once again. All the candidates trembled and strained their ears, waiting for the revelation of the final results. This assessment is finished, and our sect already knows of everyone's performance. Now, the names that I read out are those who have passed the assessment and have the qualification to become an outer sect disciple of Xianling's sect, the middle-aged man said sternly as he looked over the crowd. Everyone's eyes were focused on one point. They eagerly hoped to hear their name from the middle-aged man's mouth. Su Wan. The middle-aged man read the first name. A beautiful young girl walked out from the many candidates. Delight and agitation were written all over her lovely face. Suppressing all her emotions, she tried hard to remain calm and walked in front of everyone. From this moment on, she was a disciple of Xianling's sect. Many envious gazes landed on her successively, and upon feeling those eyes on her, she took a deep breath and lifted her chin. The middle-aged man continued, "Mou." A handsome young man was the second to walk up. Compared to Su Wan, his expression was relatively calmer, but the agitation in his eyes revealed his inner feelings. These two people both had a yellow spirit root and were outstanding in the sword array and invasive stone assessment. Passing the assessment was not unexpected to others. As the middle-aged man read out name after name, a group of people amongst all the candidates were in utter despair. Until then, the middle-aged man had already read out over 10 names, but all of them had yellow spirit roots without exception. Until then, a candidate with an orange spirit root had not appeared, and this made those with an orange spirit root rather disheartened. The gap in the grade of spirit root really could not be crossed. Even if their performance was similar, those with yellow spirit roots were prioritized and chosen. Moreover, just based on performance, almost none of those with an orange spirit root could win against those with a yellow spirit root. The initially hopeful candidates with orange spirit roots hung their heads low gloomily as the despair in their heart already told them the final outcome. Xianling's sect did not need people with such an inferior spirit root like them. Lu Xiuwen, the middle-aged man said again. Lu Xiuwen, who was prepared long ago, stepped out of the envious crowd with a face full of confidence and not a single hint of agitation. With his ability, it was to be expected for him to enter the sect. What he wanted was not just a placement as an outer sect disciple of Xianling's sect. In the future, he would want even more things. Yunshu walked forward immediately after. The assessment results for both of them were within the expectations of everyone. There was nothing surprising about it. Until then, all the names of the candidates were read out in reverse order. As Lu Xiuan and Yun Shu's assessment results were revealed, those whose names were not read out completely gave up hope. Chapter 124. To them, Xianling's sect was just an extravagant desire. Lu Xiuan stood in line with those selected, but his gaze fell on Enchanting, who was amongst those who did not make it. He did not conceal the sarcasm and arrogance on his face as he looked at Enchanting as though he was looking at a lowly ant. Enchanting, look closely. This is the gap between you and me. The moment you leave Xianling's sect, the formidable Heavens Royals will prepare a large enough surprise for you. Just when everyone thought that the assessment had come to an end and was about to leave dishearteningly, the middle-aged man who had been silent for quite some time suddenly opened his mouth once again. Enchanting. 3 simple syllables without any fluctuation. But when that name fell into everyone's ears, disbelief appeared on everyone's faces. Enchanting. That Enchanting with only a red spirit root. How could this be? Everyone could not believe their ears and suspected if the middle-aged man read the wrong name. But when they saw Enchanting walking out from the crowd with no emotion on her face, and stood on the side of the selected candidates, everyone went crazy. How could this be? How did Enchanting pass the assessment? This is impossible. How can she enter Xianling's sect with that kind of result in the 3rd segment? The group of people, who were initially sorrowful over not being selected into Xianling's sect, completely boiled over at that moment. Previously, those people whose names were read out were pretty skilled and had good spirit roots. They knew that they could not be compared to them, thus, even if they were not content, they could only accept it. However, Enchanting was selected. On what basis? So many people with yellow and orange spirit roots were rejected by the sect. What right does someone with a tiny, red spirit root have to be selected into Xianling's sect? As everyone was in a flurry, Enchanting had already stood upright. She was not at all affected by this result. Upon seeing Enchanting walking to the side, the arrogant smile on Lu Xiuan's face completely fell. Shock filled his eyes. He was simply unable to believe that Enchanting actually passed the assessment. What kind of joke was this? Everyone started discussing gradually, turning the place extremely noisy. Seeing the sight, the middle-aged man who finished reading all the candidates' names frowned slightly with an ugly expression on his face. Today's assessment has all ended, and those selected are confirmed. Non-disciples of Xianling's sect will be sent away immediately. If anyone dares to make noise outside Xianling's sect, he or she will be punished according to the sect's rules. The stern scolding was like a shocking thunder that suddenly struck all those discussion sounds into broken pieces. Everyone kept their mouths shut at that moment. Now, they were no longer candidates but a group of sad people who had no fate with the sect. How could a noble sect allow them to scream and shout here? Everyone remained silent as dissatisfaction and despair overwhelmed them. The middle-aged man was simply unwilling to waste any more time on the group of people and turned to face the selected candidates including Enchanting. From now on, you all are outer sect disciples of Xianling's sect. Follow me into the sect. Yes, everyone replied simultaneously. Without saying anything more, the middle-aged man turned around and stepped into the sect's entrance. Behind him were over 10 young boys and girls in high spirits. At that moment, they could not care about how Enchanting entered the sect. As long as they ensured that they could enter the sect, it was already very fortunate. From the start to the end, only Lu Xiaowen's shocked eyes never left Enchanting. Chapter 125. Enchanting sensed Lu Xiaowen's gaze. This time, she turned around slightly, and a maddening smile formed on her face. Lu Xiaowen, do you still remember what you said previously? If even you can enter the sect, won't I be a useless piece of trash? The sentence Lu Xiaowen said initially smashed on himself like a huge rock. Never had Lu Xiaowen dreamt that Enchanting could really enter Xianling's sect. His good-looking face turned blue as though he was given 2 big slaps publicly, making him look extremely ugly. Lu Xiaowen secretly clenched his teeth and forcefully suppressed the dissatisfaction in his heart without taking another look at Enchanting. Otherwise, he would really be pissed to death by her. The days ahead are still long. There was still a long time in Xianling's sect in the future. He would definitely not allow such a lowly Enchanting to succeed. Lu Xiaowen's reactions fell into Enchanting's eyes. She was very happy and satisfied. In this life, she needed to return back to Lu Xiaowen hundreds and even 1,000 times the pain that he had brought her in her previous life. The days ahead were still long. She has the time. Congratulations, Miss Yi. A gentle voice sounded beside Enchanting. Enchanting turned around and saw her senior brother Yun's good man smile on his sincere eyes. Now, we're all disciples of Xianling's sect. Don't address me as Miss Yi now. Is it fine if I call you senior brother Yun? Enchanting looked at Yun Shu smilingly. Though she was like a devil, she distinguished kindness and hatred clearly. She would not forget Yun Shu's kindness towards her. Yun Shu was stunned. He felt that Enchanting's smile was like a sunny day in March, so bright that he felt a little dizzy. She said senior brother Yun so naturally as though she had been long familiar with such a form of address. Yun Shu returned to his senses and quietly laughed at his weird thought, as today was the first time he met Enchanting. That is my honor, junior sister. Hearing the words junior sister made it seem as if Enchanting returned to her previous life. The senior brother Yun who protected her throughout her most miserable period of time finally returned. Enchanting narrowed her eyes. She had not forgotten her previous suspicions. Now that she entered Xianling's sect together with Yun Shu, she would be extremely careful and definitely investigate what exactly happened in the previous lifetime for such a bright and talented Yun Shu to be tortured into that abject state. In this life, it would be her who protects him. The friendly relationship between Enchanting and Yun Shu fell into Lu Xiaowen's eyes. From the start, Yun Shu was the biggest competitor in his heart, and Enchanting was even more a piece of trash that offended him. Seeing the two of them like that annoyed him even further. Xianling's sect's assessment ended, and the selected candidates were elated. The few elders within the sect who discussed the final outcome left successively and returned to their posts. Only Elder Qin stayed a little while at the water moon mirror. As he looked at Enchanting through the water moon mirror, his eyes had a complicated expression, but more than that, they were filled with regret. Elder Qin, the preparation for the Lingyu array is completed. Please return and take a look, said an array faction disciple as he invited Elder Qin to leave. Elder Qin sighed lightly. Such a pity, really such a pity, all of Enchanting's performances stunned him deeply. If Enchanting did not have a red spirit root, with just her level of talent, Elder Qin would definitely make an exception and directly accept her as an inner sect disciple of the array faction. However, ultimately, it was such a pity. Chapter 126. No one in 100 years would be able to compete against Enchanting's results in the third segment. Even the dissatisfied Elder Lin did not speak a word about Enchanting entering Xianling's sect. How was it that such a talented and amazing young girl had only a red spirit root? The more Elder Qin thought about it, the more despondent he was. If he had not known that a spirit root was hard to upgrade, he really would not give up. As long as Enchanting had an orange or yellow spirit root, the other 3 sect elders would most probably want to fight over Enchanting. However, Elder Qin could only sigh, shake his head, and leave. Once she entered the sect, how she developed herself from then on would be all up to her. At that very moment, Elder Lin, who left the assessment observation location, returned to the sword faction with a gloomy expression. Upon seeing Elder Lin's unhappy face, the sect disciples cautiously retreated to a side and bowed respectfully without daring to utter a word. Xianling's sect was famous for its sword faction, and the sword faction was the most important. All the disciples would need to enter the sword faction to practice swordsmanship, and, thus, Elder Lin's position in Xianling's sect was self-evident. Returning to the main hall of the sword faction, Elder Lin sat on the chair with a deep frown. He felt a stifling feeling as he thought of Elder Qin's proud reaction upon knowing Enchanting's real result for the 3rd segment. Elder Lin. A tall and handsome young man entered the hall and greeted Elder Lin obediently. Elder Lin was initially unhappy, but his stiff expression relaxed when he saw the young man. Ning Luo, is there anything that you're finding me for now? Elder Lin asked as he looked at the disciple before him whom he was extremely satisfied with. Regarding the absolute kill sword array, I have already brought people to investigate it. There is nothing strange about the sword array. However, it was used to fight against demonic beasts a few months ago, and perhaps it wasn't stable yet. I have already changed the raw stone in the sword array, and there should not be any more problems, Ning Luo said. Elder Lin nodded satisfyingly. Ning Luo, you're the disciple whom I think the most highly of. I have always been at ease with you handling matters. I do not wish for the sword array accident to happen again in the future. Do order people to keep a tighter eye on it. Yes, I will, Ning Luo replied. Is there any other thing? Elder Lin asked. Ning Luo paused as he saw Elder Lin's slightly gloomy expression from the corner of his eyes. I will definitely put in my best regarding the sword array, so please do not be troubled over it. Don't let it affect your health. Elder Lin was very comforted. Yet, once he thought of Elder Qin's expression when he asked whether Enchanting passed the assessment, Elder Lin's face darkened again. Fine. It's only that the array faction elder thinks highly of a disciple who newly entered the sect. To think that my Xianling sect would actually have a disciple with a red spirit root, it's very shameful, and we would be ridiculed by other sects. Red spirit root. Ning Luo was surprised as well. Elder Lin sneered, that disciple is Enchanting. She was personally recommended by Mu Su, and Elder Lin thinks pretty highly of her. However, she is ultimately still a red spirit root and will not become anything big. I'm only afraid she would affect our sect's reputation. There were very few people with orange spirit roots in all sects, and it was such an absurdity that they accepted a red spirit root as an outer sect disciple. Ning Luo did not say anything, but upon hearing Enchanting, a weird expression flashed across his eyes suddenly. Was not Enchanting the person whom Yu warned about? She really passed the sect assessment. Chapter 127, Whatever. You can go down first. It seemed that Elder Lin was unwilling to say anything more as he waved a hand and allowed Ning Luo to retreat first. Ning Luo left the main hall with many thoughts running across his head. Senior Brother Ning, arrangements for the outer sect disciples are already made. I heard that there are 2 green spirit roots this time, said one inner sect disciple who went up to Ning Luo upon seeing him. Ning Luo returned to his senses and said flatly, even if they have green spirit roots, they're still merely outer sect disciples. We are from the inner sect. There's no need to be bothered with it. There was a big difference between the inner and outer sect. In every sect, there were many outer sect disciples, but everyone knew that only getting into the inner sect would they be considered a real disciple of the sect and learn the sect's mystic techniques. That's true. That disciple scratched his head and continued. I saw that Elder Lin was unhappy when he came back just now. Did anything happen in the assessment? Ning Luo wanted to say something, but when he thought of what Yi Yu said previously, a sly look emerged in his eyes. Nothing much actually. He just met with some irritating thing. This year, things are not as simple as just having only 2 disciples with green spirit roots in the outer sect. Other than that, our sect even accepted a young girl with a red spirit root as an exception. Red spirit root? The disciple's eyes almost fell out when he heard it. Are you joking? How can a red spirit root enter the sect? Ning Luo laughed. It is no longer important whether it is possible or not. What is important is that the person has already entered our outer sect. That disciple's expression turned weird. Ning Luo did not say anything else to him, and his mind was preoccupied on another matter. Enchanting was the person whom Yi Yu wanted him to give special treatment to. Previously when Yi Yu's letter mentioned Enchanting, Ning Luo was not concerned about it. After all, Yi Yu did clearly write that Enchanting was only a red spirit root. Ning Luo originally thought that it was definitely impossible for such a person to enter Xianling's sect. Yet, unexpectedly, things did not go as one wished. Ning Luo was very clear that none of the sects would make an exception for anyone to accept them as a disciple. If they did not pass the assessment, the sect would not give the mighty figures any face regardless of who they are. He really did not expect Enchanting to pass the Xianling sect entrance assessment with a red spirit root. However, a smile hung on Ning Luo's lips. Regardless of how Enchanting entered Xianling sect, she was already a Xianling sect disciple from the moment she entered the sect. If she was someone Yi Yu wanted to take care of, he would naturally not let Enchanting be too happy in Xianling sect. Come here. Ning Luo waved at a disciple nearby who went forward immediately. Help me pass a message to Zhou Xian from the outer sect, Ning Luo said. Zhou Xian. Senior brother Ning, just tell me what you want me to pass on to him, replied the disciple very obediently. Ning Luo had outstanding skills and was one of the best amongst the inner sect disciples. Moreover, the sword faction's Elder Lin favored him, and, thus, he had a certain level of influence in the inner sect. Ning Luo smiled and had the person lean over as he quietly whispered something into his ears. After listening to it, the disciple could not help but look shocked. However, his face returned to normal very quickly. Senior brother Ning, I will definitely pass this message. Go ahead. Ning Luo waved a hand without emotions. Yes. Looking at that disciple's departing back view, the smile on Ning Luo's face deepened. Enchanting, I will definitely take care of you well, on behalf of Yi Yu. Chapter 128. The middle-aged man brought the selected candidates into the outer sect. Everything in the sect amazed the young boys and girls who just entered the sect. However, they were all very smart to suppress their emotions and listen to the middle-aged man's orders detailedly. The outer sect disciples stayed at the same location with 3 people in a room, males and females separated. Enchanting was assigned to a room. Apart from her, Su Wan, who entered as the same batch as her, was assigned to that room as well. In the room, other than the 2 new disciples, there was another person. The moment she opened the door and entered the room, Enchanting saw an aloof figure sitting at a table alone. Even when she and Su Wan entered the room, that girl had not looked up at all. Su Wan greets senior sister. The gentle Su Wan was very sensible and stepped forward to greet the girl obediently when she saw the girl sitting there. That girl was tall and had sharp features but exuded detachment and indifference. When she heard Su Wan's voice, she merely took a look perfunctorily without replying a single word. Su Wan's expression turned a little ugly, but she smartly did not show anything on her face. She walked to an empty bed at a side and unpacked her luggage a little. Yi Qingtang's gaze swept over that aloof girl, but a yearning expression emerged in her eyes. In her previous life, she was also allocated into this room, and there was not a change in the people in the room. Su Wan was still Su Wan, and this aloof girl still remained there. She was Lin Long. She had a green spirit root and was pretty talented. However, she was usually very silent and did not bother others at all. That time, Yi Qingtang stayed in this room for many years and only heard Lin Long say a few words in total. Yi Qingtang originally did not have anything to do with Lin Long, but because Lin Long once stepped up to resolve Yi Qingtang's predicament, Yi Qingtang remembered this favor. Yi Qingtang greets senior sister Lin. Yi Qingtang stepped forward slowly and said with gratitude. A word, senior sister Lin, made Lin Long, who was looking down, look up slightly at the stunning-looking girl in front of her. How do you know my name? Lin Long's cold voice rang. There is a Lin sewed on senior sister Lin's sleeve, so I took a bold guess. Yi Qingtang smiled. Lin Long looked down at the barely legible Lin word on the bamboo leaves image sewed on her sleeves. Her eyes glistened as she raised her head and took a look at Yi Qingtang, though her expression remained the same. Yi Qingtang. I'll remember. Afterward, she continued looking at the book in her hand without wanting to say any more. Yi Qingtang had been used to Lin Long's aloofness long ago and did not think much about it as she went to settle her own matters. The rooms of Xianling sect's disciples were relatively wide. Even if there were 3 people in a room, each person had their own individual space, and it did not seem crowded. Yi Qingtang laid her bed sheets and sat by her bed, carrying the little lightning dragon which had been nested in her arms for a long time. The little figure seemed a little tired and laid in Yi Qingtang's arms listlessly with its tiny head in Yi Qingtang's palm. Yi Qingtang realized that once the little lightning dragon turned into human form, it would become unusually frail. It was also the first time Yi Qingtang raised a lightning dragon, and she really could not understand what was going on with it. Luckily, it did not have any other special reaction apart from being tired. Only then was she put at ease. After feeding the little lightning dragon a few spirit stones, Yi Qingtang started thinking about how to walk down the route in the sect. Chapter 129. In her previous life, it was hard for Yi Qingtang to train in the sect. Even if she feigned a spirit root, she still did not have a spirit root in reality. Hence, it was especially difficult for her when she was cultivating in the sect. For a cultivation technique that others would be able to learn in a day or two, she would require over 10 times the duration only to be able to barely compete with others. Precisely because her cultivation was slow, she seemed exceptionally clumsy amongst all the disciples and suffered quite a lot. But this time, everything was different. The black heaven water that Yi Qingtang required was within the sect's mystic realm. Yi Qingtang knew of it quite late back then, and that item had already been obtained by an inner sect disciple. This time, she came at just the right time, and she would have to enter the inner sect as soon as possible if she wanted to obtain the black heaven water. And only by entering the inner sect would she obtain the sect's highest level martial techniques. The outer sect was just a step of hers. She must think of a way to pass the inner sect assessment within a year, otherwise, she would have no fate with the black heaven water. It would be even more difficult for her to recover from the loss of her spirit root and grow her new spirit root. At the thought of this, Yi Qingtang was very motivated and had a clearer image of what she had to do next. After a short rest, the newly entered disciples had to gather outside to listen to allocations. While Yi Qingtang just started preparing to leave, Su Wan had already left ahead of her. Obviously, although Su Wan was not welcomed by Lin Long, she did not intend to interact with Yi Qingtang. To this, Yi Qingtang was not bothered at all. At the public square in the outer sect, all the newly entered disciples were gathered. Enchanting arrived a little later. Upon seeing Enchanting, Yun Shu, who had already changed into Xianling sect's uniform and was standing at the public square, could not help but show a gentle smile. "Junior sister Yi, you're the only one left. Hurry up." Enchanting chuckled and stood beside Yun Shu immediately. The middle-aged man who was in charge of the assessment had left, and the person standing before Enchanting and the rest was an outer sect elder. Sects are divided into the inner sect and outer sect, with the disciples in the former being in a respectable place that outer sect disciples could not be compared to. Thus, the elders in charge of the outer sect were Xianling sect's second-class elders. One would not have any fate to meet the real elders from the four factions if they did not enter the inner sect. The elder standing in front of them was donned in gray, and his both hands were behind his back. He looked over 50 years old and had a strict expression. Looking over the crowd, he frowned slightly when he saw Enchanting, but did not say anything much. He simply said to the group of new disciples, "After entering Xianling sect today, you all are no longer the same as those people outside. You must remember that you are a disciple of Xianling sect, and regardless of what you do, the sect's honor must be placed as a priority. From today onwards, you will enter the outer sect sword faction to cultivate your swordsmanship. You are to listen to all the arrangements by the sect. If there's anyone who dares to go against the sect's rules, the person will be expelled from the sect and never be allowed in ever again." Enchanting did not know whether it was real or not, but she kept feeling that the outer sect elder seemed to be looking at her when he mentioned the sect's honor. She touched the tip of her nose. It seemed that all the elders already knew that she passed the assessment with a red spirit root. Indeed, in sects where orange spirit roots were already very rare, her only red spirit root was already unusually eye-catching. Chapter 130. Despite the fact that Enchanting passed the 3 segments of the entrance assessment with flying colors, her red spirit root was still ultimately displeasing to all elders. Very obviously, the elder from the outer sect sword faction did not think highly of Enchanting, who had a red spirit root. Even if the elder did not show any extreme behavior, the casual look on his face already revealed his despise and belittlement. Enchanting had already expected this, as she experienced the same thing in her previous life as well. However, having a red spirit root today did not mean she would have a red spirit root her entire life. After admonishing the new disciples for a while, the elder from the outer sect sword faction informed them of the rules in the sect. The sect would assign certain missions for disciples apart from cultivation. Upon completion of the missions, the disciples would obtain Xianming points from the sect. These Xianming points had a special meaning in the sect. Not only could the disciples use the points to exchange for elixirs and martial technique scrolls, but it could also be used to exchange for the right to use the Holy Land for cultivation. It could be said that the Xianming points were equal to another type of currency within the sect. It could bring even more opportunities for cultivation and benefits for all disciples. Other than the assigned missions, one could also obtain the Xianming points by heading to the rewards pavilion and completing any mission of their choice where points were rewarded correspondingly. After he was done announcing the rules of the outer sect, the elder from the outer sect sword faction nodded at a disciple behind him. That disciple went forward immediately. In his hands was a tray with dozens of small porcelain bottles placed in it. Enchanting's eyes shone when she saw the porcelain bottles. At the same time, the elder said once again, "This is the She Spirit Pill. In the future, everyone will be given 2 bottles of the She Spirit Pill every month." Looks of happiness could be seen in the new disciples' eyes when they heard the elder's words. The She Spirit Pill was a rather rare elixir which was extremely helpful for their cultivation. However, outside the sect, even royals had difficulty buying such an elixir. These kinds of elixirs could only be refined in sects, and the prescriptions were held in the hands of the herbal faction's elders without circulating it outside. If brought outside the sect, such a she-spirit pill would still be in short supply even if it were to be sold for over thousands per pill. Yet, in the sect, this was given to disciples monthly. 2 bottles of she-spirit pill were enough for the new disciples to feel the distance between the sect and the outside world, and this was merely the most basic thing. Those she-spirit pills were quickly placed into the hands of the new disciples, and almost everyone held it exceptionally carefully. Even for disciples from prominent backgrounds such as Lu Xiaoan and Yun Shu, they could not help but wear a happy expression when they saw the she-spirit pills. This was an item that normal people were unable to obtain. Yi Qingtang's lips tugged up as she looked at the she-spirit pill. This item was really a good thing. The she-spirit pills could help her in her cultivation and even nourish her newly grown spirit root. The she-spirit pill had a strong spirit energy, and what her spirit root needed to grow was none other than spirit energy. After handing out the she-spirit pills, the elder left straight away without saying much. In the outer sect, the elder would not teach the disciples martial arts directly. If they wanted to cultivate, they had to go to the sword faction pavilion and listen to the lessons by the elders of the outer sect. Just when everyone was excited over obtaining the she-spirit pills, they did not notice a few devious pairs of eyes staring at the she-spirit pills in their hands. Chapter 131. Everyone was in high spirits after receiving the she-spirit pills and wanted to use the pills to further improve themselves in their cultivation. Just when the new disciples were preparing to leave, a bustling noise suddenly came from the side of the public square. A group of outer sect disciples were gathered together and having a jolly time. That lively scene attracted the group of disciples who just entered the outer sect of Xianling sect, and many headed in that direction out of curiosity. In the crowd, there was a 10-square-meter empty space in the center of the crowd, where a tall outer sect disciple stood imposingly. From the surrounding people's discussions, the new disciples finally understood what was going on. The person standing in the middle of the crowd was called Zhou Chu. He had been in the outer sect for 2 to 3 years, and although his skills were not top-notch, he was ranked in the top 1,000 people amongst over 3,000 people in the outer sect. Now, Zhou Chu was standing there to set up an arena. Malicious fighting was completely banned in sects. Infighting amongst disciples in the same sect was all the more disallowed, otherwise, they would receive extremely strict punishments. The arena was the only place where disciples could exchange blows with each other openly, though it was to be of a suitable degree and could not be overly extreme. The way Zhou Chu started an arena was very interesting. He challenged the outer sect disciples ranked in the last 2,000 places, and both parties would bet with she-spirit pills where the winning party could obtain the pills. Everyone was aware of how precious the she-spirit pills were, and once the new disciples heard that the arena actually used the she-spirit pills as a bet, they were instantly interested. However, they were not fools. No matter what, Zhou Chu had been a disciple in the sect for 2 to 3 years, and there was no comparability between them, the newly joined disciples, and him. We don't have much to do with this arena. How can we possibly beat senior brother Zhou? A new disciple sighed rather disappointingly. Although there was the she-spirit pill as bait, they were still self-aware. That new disciple's lament traveled into Zhou Chu's ears, and Zhou Chu laughed. This junior brother over here, I'm afraid you're mistaken. I don't require you to beat me on this arena. As long as you all can withstand 3 of my moves, I will gift you all a bottle of she-spirit pill. If you can withstand 6 moves, I will gift you 2 bottles. With these words, those new disciples who previously dropped the idea suddenly had a glimmer of hope. If they really had to fight with Zhou Chu, they would definitely not be able to win. However, if they only had to receive his 3 moves, why not give it a try? Many thoughts ran across everyone's mind. She-spirit pills were precious, and although they obtained 2 bottles, it was definitely a case of the more the better. Immediately, the group of new disciples was a little swayed. Their reactions fell into Zhou Chu's eyes, and a cold scoff emerged in his eyes. Upon seeing the excited expression of the junior brothers and sisters, the old outer sect disciples from aside could not help but quietly shake their heads. Someone might just be baited again. Enchanting and Yun Shu were about to leave but were attracted over by the noise. A sneer hung on the corner of Enchanting's lips when she saw Zhou Chu's face. Rather, it was Yun Shu who was interested in the arena. You can obtain a bottle of She's Spirit Pill as long as you receive 3 moves. This arena is pretty interesting, Yun Shu chuckled. Chapter 132, Pretty Interesting. Enchanting scoffed in her heart. This Zhou Chu was an acquaintance of hers in her previous life. Zhou Chu's ability was slightly above average in the outer sect and was not considered outstanding, but the arena he set up was a nightmare for plenty of new disciples. Zhou Chu's arena appeared to be targeted against all the disciples ranked below him and seemed easy since one would win only by receiving 3 moves from him. But only those who went up the arena would know how fierce these 3 moves were. Zhou Chu specialized in fist techniques, and the force from his one punch was enough to crumble a boulder. Unless one was made from steel, which disciple would dare to take his 3 moves? The old outer sect disciples already knew Zhou Chu's trap from long ago and would naturally not be fooled. This arena by Zhou Chu was used to cajole new disciples. The new disciples had just obtained the She's Spirit Pills, and with Zhou Chu opening an arena here thereafter, wasn't he simply waiting for them to suffer from their own actions? In Enchanting's previous life, she saw many newly entered disciples being beaten up by Zhou Chu until they spat blood because of their greed. On the other hand, Zhou Chu used this to obtain a fair amount of She's Spirit Pills from the new disciples. If not for the support of those She's Spirit Pills, how was he able to climb up to the first 1,000 ranks? Enchanting looked at the same trick that Zhou Chu had used in both her previous and current life and fell into a trance. She was also duped in her previous life and ended up spitting blood from being beaten by Zhou Chu, while the She's Spirit Pills that were just handed to her were also snatched away by Zhou Chu. Senior brother Yun wants to give it a try. Enchanting returned to her senses and turned to ask Yun Shu. Yun Shu was slightly taken aback and chuckled. I'm a little interested, but I'll take a look for the time being. Just as Yun Shu was hesitating, a person went up the arena a step ahead of him. Looking up, Enchanting sneered in her heart. The first person who went up the arena was not anyone else but Lu Xiuwen. I just need to receive 3 moves from you, and I can obtain a bottle of She's Spirit Pill. Lu Xiuwen stood on the arena arrogantly. After looking at Lu Xiuwen, Zhou Chu flashed a friendly smile. That's right. I wonder what's this junior brother's name? Lu Xiuwen replied, Lu Xiuwen. Zhou Chu's face froze slightly. The purpose of setting up this arena was to trick those new disciples who did not know what was going on into losing the She's Spirit Pills to him. However, he was not foolish as well. He had already asked around when the new disciples entered the sect. In this batch, there were 2 people with green spirit roots who were relatively skilled and born in renowned families. He did not expect that the first to go up the stage was actually Lu Xiuwen. So it's junior brother Lu. I've long heard that you have amazing natural endowments, and now that I see you, it's indeed so. There's no need to continue this competition, Zhou Chu said smoothly and immediately handed a bottle of She's Spirit Pill into Lu Xiuwen's hands. Treat this bottle of She's Spirit Pill as a first meeting gift from me to Lu junior brother. In the future, we will be martial brothers from the same sect. Zhou Chu was smart, Lu Xiuwen was pretty skilled and also of formidable heaven's royals. Establishing good relations with such a person was obviously the best choice. Seeing the She's Spirit Pill being handed to him, Lu Xiuwen did not say anything much and left the arena straight away. This sight made the other new disciples even more excited. I'll do it. A new disciple hurriedly went up the arena as though he was deeply afraid that Zhou Chu would lose all the she spirit pills to others who went before him and not have any left to give him. Zhou Chu asked the other party's background as usual, but this time, he was not as amiable as he was to Lu Xiuan previously and directly started a match. Chapter 133. The new disciple also knew that he was definitely not Zhou Chu's opponent, but based on the fact that his own physique was not bad, he thought that no matter how poorly skilled he was, he would not be knocked out from 3 blows. Even if he were to sustain some injuries, he would still be able to forcefully hold out. This thought came across the minds of many new disciples. Logically, there was nothing wrong with this thought. Unless there was an extremely huge disparity between the two parties, it was almost impossible for one to knock out the other party in 3 moves. If Zhou Chu were an inner sect disciple, no one would dare to receive his punches, but since he was also in the outer sect, they believed that there was not too big of a gap in their abilities. Expectantly, the new disciple directed his energy and stood still as he waited to receive the 3 moves and take the she spirit pill. Zhou Chu looked full of smiles, but in reality, a force already gathered in his hands. He suddenly attacked, greeting the new disciple with his fist. Since the new disciple was to receive the attack, he could also strike a move to handle the attack as long as he could receive the next move. When the two of them exchanged blows, Zhou Chu landed a heavy punch straight on the other party's face, and that disciple immediately raised a hand to block the attack, receiving the first move. Although it was rather strenuous, joy riled up in the new disciple's heart. Indeed, receiving a few of Zhou Chu's moves was not tough. While the force of Zhou Chu's punch was very huge, he was not cunning in his attacks, so there should not be a problem in forcefully receiving the attacks. A while later, Zhou Chu struck a second move, and this was also safely received by the new disciple. The continuous 2 moves fell into the eyes of the onlookers. After seeing that Zhou Chu's moves were neither swift nor fierce, the new disciples who were still hesitant immediately let down their guard and clenched their fists in preparation to give it a try. Seeing the new disciples letting down their guards, Yi Qingtang silently shook her head from the side. Zhou Chu's trick was really effective. In the 3 moves, the most crucial one was the 3rd move. Zhou Chu struck and landed his 3rd move, which appeared exactly the same as the previous moves with the same speed that one could easily withstand. However, just when that new disciple raised his hand to receive the move and met Zhou Chu's fist, he could only feel a violent force like that of a fierce tiger running downhill, penetrating from the fist into his entire body. That force was extremely huge and was simply not what he could bear. Before he could return to his senses, his entire body was flung out from the huge force. Everyone thought that Zhou Chu's 3 moves were rather easy to receive, and no one would have thought that the new disciple would suddenly miss at the last move. With the disciple losing at the 3rd move, the fight was naturally over. That disciple held on his painful chest and looked up at Zhou Chu, who was fake smiling. Only he would know that the ordinary-looking 3rd move was utterly different from the 2 moves exchanged previously. Many new disciples around him still found it a pity, as they felt that he was so close to winning a bottle of she spirit pill. Now, not only did that new disciple not win the she spirit pill, he lost she spirit pill that he just obtained to Zhou Chu. It's really a pity, junior brother. Just a little more, and you could have received the 3rd move. Zhou Chu purposely sighed regrettably with an evil glint in his eyes as he held the she spirit pill he obtained. Amongst these new disciples, how many could withstand one punch from him? If he didn't go easy first, how else could he let this group of little bastards bear hope and come forward to gift him the she spirit pills one by one? Chapter 134. If Zhou Chu used all his force from the start, definitely no one would dare to go up. But with such a cover-up, the disciples would immediately think that they have a chance of winning. To catch a big fish, one must cast a long line. Zhou Chu was really skillful in using this strategy. Moreover, the new disciples were not old, 15, 16-year-olds were very easy to be duped. As expected, when the first new disciple lost a bottle of Shi's spirit pill, a few other new disciples went up successively. Those new disciples, without exception, did not have any energy to block Zhou Chu's third move. 1 or 2 times was a coincidence, but if so many people lost at the third move, it would be really dumb of those new disciples if they still did not realize anything fishy. In just a short while, Zhou Chu collected 5 to 6 bottles of Shi's spirit pills. Subtracting the bottle he gave to Lu Xiuwen, he still gained quite a lot. Seeing as to how the remaining new disciples began to be more vigilant, Zhou Chu knew that no one else in this new batch would be fooled anymore. This senior brother Zhou is misbehaving. Yun Shu, who had already seen Zhou Chu's scheme, could not help but frown and feel unhappy. Yi Qingtang narrowed her eyes and looked at the dejected look of the disciples who lost their Shi spirit pills as though she saw herself in her previous life. Having 2 bottles of Shi spirit pills every month already was not ample enough. Now that 1 bottle was snatched away when they just received it, the remaining 1 bottle was simply not enough to support their consumption for a month. With such dissipation, the new disciples would definitely suffer a loss in their cultivation. Yi Qingtang suddenly turned around and replied to Yun Shu, "Senior brother Yun, let's play a round, should we?" Yun Shu was slightly taken aback and did not know what Yi Qingtang's words meant. Yi Qingtang quietly said a few words by Yun Shu's ears, and Yun Shu could not help but widen his eyes. On the arena, Zhou Chu waited for a while, and after realizing that no fishes were going to be baited anymore, he then prepared to stop. But just when Zhou Chu was about to leave, a small figure suddenly stepped up the arena. "Senior brother Zhou, can I give this a try?" A girl's voice, which had a slight hint of laughter, reverberated on the arena. Everyone's eyes were instantly fixed on the tiny figure on the arena. Zhou Chu paused in his tracks. Turning around, he saw a skinny, beautiful girl walking up the arena and was stunned. "How do I address you, junior sister?" Zhou Chu asked carefully. The new disciples had already clearly seen his scheme. How could there be such a foolish person to come knocking on his door? "I am Yi Qingtang," Yi Qingtang said with a smile. The caution in Zhou Chu's eyes vanished into thin air once Yi Qingtang said her name, and a scornful expression instantly appeared in his eyes. There was already a rumor that a girl with a red spirit root was selected amongst this batch of new disciples. This was a casual joke amongst them, and Zhou Chu would never have thought that the last to go up the arena would actually be the girl with an inferior red spirit root. He had seen people who courted death, but he had never seen someone who really wanted to court death. Those new disciples with yellow spirit roots were not even his opponent, yet this girl still wanted to challenge him. When Lu Xiuwen, who was already ready to leave, saw Yi Qingtang going up the stage, he returned immediately and looked at her as though he was ready to watch a good show. Those new disciples were taken aback for a moment as well because of Yi Qingtang's appearance. Everyone felt that Yi Qingtang was definitely crazy. Otherwise, how would a girl with such a small red spirit root dare to enter the arena? Chapter 135. Oh. Does junior sister Yi wants to give it a try? How do you want to compete? Zhou Chu would naturally not let go of such a fat sheep. There was already no one going up the arena, and Yi Qingtang was the last person that he could trick. Of course, he had to properly greet her. Yi Qingtang calmly looked at the greed in Zhou Chu's eyes, and her lips curled up. "Just now, senior brother Zhou said that I would win a bottle of Shi's spirit pills as long as I receive 3 moves. I think this bet seems pretty little. How about we bet on 4 bottles? Yi Qingtang said with a smile. Once her words were said, everyone around here was instantly dumbfounded. Is Yi Qingtang crazy? She actually wants to bet on 4 bottles of She Spirit pills with senior brother Zhou. Where would she get 4 bottles from? Those new disciples who went up the arena previously were extremely shocked, and they saw Yi Qingtang's crazy act and only felt that Yi Qingtang had nothing better to do and was sending herself to death's door. However, there were also some bad-meaning disciples who lost their She Spirit pills who hoped that someone would be worse than them since they lost a bottle of She Spirit pill and were going to fall behind others in their cultivation. It so happened that Yi Qingtang's suggestion fulfilled their requirements. Similarly, Zhou Chu did not expect that the fat sheep that foolishly delivered herself to him would be so self-aware. He initially thought that he would end things by cheating 1 bottle. Who would have thought? Yi Qingtang actually came over to increase the bet, and this really made him happy. Junior sister Yi, don't say I'm bullying you. I can agree to your request, but I want to ask something. You, a new disciple, just entered the sect and received 2 bottles of She Spirit pills in total. If you want to compete with me, you should show some sincerity, right? Yi Qingtang chuckled and immediately took out 4 bottles of She Spirit pills from her arms. Once he saw those 4 bottles, Zhou Chu's eyes almost popped out. This girl really had 4 bottles. From a side, Yunshu did not know whether to laugh or cry at Yi Qingtang's crazy act. Amongst the 4 bottles of She Spirit pills in her hands, 2 of them were his. When Yi Qingtang asked him for his She Spirit pills just now, Yunshu was still a little hesitant. However, when he saw the girl's sincere look, Yunshu could not bear to reject her. He already mentally prepared himself and treated it as going crazy with Yi Qingtang for once, so be it if she lost them all. While She Spirit pills were precious, Yunshu had a peaceful nature and was not too concerned. Everyone was quite surprised that Yi Qingtang could obtain 4 bottles of She Spirit pills and were all curious where she got 2 additional bottles from. Only Lu Xiuan frowned slightly as his gaze landed on Yunshu, who was smiling bitterly from a side. Seeing Yunshu's behavior, Lu Xiuan already knew the background of the other 2 bottles and could not help but scoff in his heart. To think that he still thought of Yunshu as his only competitor in the batch. Who would have thought that Yunshu would be this foolish to give his She Spirit pills to Yi Qingtang to play around with? Yet, coming to think of it, Lu Xiuan was satisfied. His abilities were comparable to Yunshu's. If he could pull a gap between them the moment he entered the sect, it would naturally be the best. He had the confidence that he could leave Yunshu behind with the advantage of these 2 bottles of She Spirit pills. No one at the scene felt that Yi Qingtang was able to win. The new disciples were watching the good show while the old disciples quietly sighed. Lin Long walked past the arena, and while she did not intend to pay attention to it initially, she stopped in her tracks when she saw the tiny frame in the corner of her eyes. Chapter 136, It's Her. Lin Longs looked over the arena, and an unhappy expression emerged in her eyes when she saw Zhou Chu. She had heard some things about this arena as well, but she did not expect that Yi Qingtang, who appeared very calm, would actually look for trouble like others. Instinctively, she stood aside and watched on quietly. After confirming that Yi Qingtang had 4 bottles of She Spirit pills, Zhou Chu almost struck immediately without warming up. The 4 additional bottles now would cover the quota given to them in 2 months. Sure. Since junior sister Yi is so sincere, I will accept it as your senior brother. After 3 moves, my 4 bottles of She Spirit pills will be all yours if you can receive my moves, Zhou Chu said as he purposely feigned generosity and placed 4 bottles of She Spirit pills aside. However, he was very clear that Yi Qingtang definitely did not have the ability to take away these 4 bottles and would have to give him 4 bottles instead. He was not afraid of Yi Qingtang going back on her words. Anyone in the arena in the sect must follow rules, and if anyone went back on their words, they would be punished once the news traveled into the warden's ears. Please take care of me, senior brother. Yi Qingtang cupped one hand in another, and she lowered her eyes as a sly look flashed across in her eyes. Zhou Chu nodded aloofly and focused on his breathing. This time, he did not intend to play the same trick and go easy on the first two moves. Anyway, no one would go up the arena after Enchanting, and he obviously wanted to finish her as quickly as possible. Below the arena, an ominous feeling rose up within Yun Shu as he looked at Zhou Chu directing his energy. The method Zhou Chu used to direct his energy was extremely similar to the one he used in the third method previously. Could it be that he wanted to finish Enchanting in the first move? Yun Shu could not help but frown. Brother Yun, I'm afraid you'll be in deep waters because of Enchanting. Lu Xiaowen's voice rang beside Yun Shu's ears. Yun Shu looked over and saw that Lu Xiaowen actually came to his side since some time ago. Enchanting has another 2 bottles of she spirit pills in her hands. Those should be yours, right? I know that Brother Yun is kind by nature, but there are some things that shouldn't be compromised so easily like this. You should have seen the outcome of all the other junior and senior brothers previously. How would Enchanting be able to withstand 3 moves from senior brother Zhou? Yun Shu merely looked at him coldly without saying anything. Lu Xiaowen was not too bothered, he merely wanted to watch the 2 of them embarrass themselves in front of him. On the arena, Zhou Chu had already gathered his force in his fists. With a sudden loud roar and a quick jump, he dashed for Enchanting directly. Enchanting remained rooted to the ground calmly as though she did not see Zhou Chu's incoming powerful punch. Everyone below the arena was already trembling in fear at the sight. Seeing how Enchanting stood still without any intention to receive the move, they thought that Enchanting was really seeking death and would be knocked out by Zhou Chu without even withstanding 1 move. However, just when Zhou Chu's punch was about to land on Enchanting's face, Enchanting suddenly bent down. The timing when she bent down was too ingenious. When Zhou Chu threw an extremely powerful punch, her small movement caused Zhou Chu to end up punching the air without warning. Zhou Chu was indeed a little dumbfounded when he punched the air. He clearly saw Enchanting remaining still as though she was too stunned to move. How was it that this girl suddenly bent down and avoided his punch the moment he attacked? Chapter 137. Zhou Chu turned to look at Enchanting and saw that she actually picked up a light, square handkerchief from the ground. I didn't notice that this handkerchief fell on the ground just now, Enchanting said as she picked up the handkerchief and straightened herself smilingly. In that moment, everyone was muddled. The moment Zhou Chu threw out a punch, everyone knew that this sparring was over. Enchanting was too slow-witted to receive his move. However, no one expected that at that critical moment, Enchanting actually bent down and avoided the attack miraculously. And what made people more speechless was, she bent down only to pick the handkerchief on the ground. Her luck was a little too good. Everyone felt speechless instantly, and the 10 strings in their hearts were suddenly loosened. Zhou Chu's imposing punch was dodged by Enchanting so casually, and Zhou Chu's face turned blue in a moment as well. If Enchanting did not have just a tiny red spirit root, Zhou Chu would have thought that she was purposely fooling around with him. Oh. Senior brother Zhou already threw out a move. I didn't notice. Enchanting held the handkerchief and looked at Zhou Chu a little shockingly as though she just realized that Zhou Chu had already attacked. The corner of Zhou Chu's lips twitched, and he wished he could kill this girl who had it easy but was still acting innocent. There are still 2 moves then? Enchanting asked with a smile. There are still 2 moves, indeed. Junior sister Yi should be more focused this time, Zhou Chu said while suppressing his grievance. Please go ahead, senior brother Zhou. Enchanting smiled as she kept the small handkerchief. Zhou Chu did not rest for a moment and launched an attack at Enchanting immediately. There was a slight change in expression in Yi Qingtang's eyes. At the moment when Zhou Chu attacked, Yi Qingtang used some mysterious footstep and spun on her heels, turning around. Just by raising her tiny wrist, she directly met with Zhou Chu's fist, which seemed like a careless graze but dispersed the force in Zhou Chu's fist invisibly. Yi Qingtang turned her palm over and pushed Zhou Chu, forcing him to fall forward again in the direction of the force of his punch. To others, this scene appeared as Yi Qingtang shifting her body in a panic. Moreover, the position where she raised her hand to block the move was incorrect as well. But it was just these two movements that made Zhou Chu punch the air once again. He stumbled forward a few steps due to the force from his punch and almost fell. After barely regaining his balance, Zhou Chu was utterly confused. What happened? How did his punch suddenly become so weak and soft? Zhou Chu originally suspected whether Yi Qingtang played any tricks, but their interaction just now was only for a moment, and Yi Qingtang only raised his fist with her wrist without using any force. But what happened to him? The next move that he had already prepared could not be carried out due to the sudden and violent stumble. It so happened that Yi Qingtang weirdly dodged this second move. Two successive failed moves caused Zhou Chu's expression to turn ugly. Other disciples did not react much and merely felt that Yi Qingtang was pretty lucky. Furthermore, Zhou Chu did not beat any other new disciples within 2 moves, though this point was overlooked by everyone. They only felt that Zhou Chu was purposely going easy. Only people as skilled as Yun Shu and Lu Xiuan could tell that both of Zhou Chu's moves were intended to end the competition immediately. It was just that Yi Qingtang's receiving act was too strange, and one really could not tell whether it was because her luck was good or that Zhou Chu went easy on her. Chapter 138. The smile on Lu Xiuan's face could not help but fall a little. Wanting to sense whether Yi Qingtang played any tricks, he narrowed his eyes, but he did not feel that there were any special moves after thinking over and over again. 2 out of 3 moves were over. Only 1 move was left, and then Yi Qingtang would win. This time, Zhou Chu did not dare to be careless as well. God knows why this annoying girl was so cursed. She obviously looked very weak, how could he not manage to hit her? Zhou Chu took a deep breath, refusing to believe in superstitions, and the eyes which he looked at Yi Qingtang with became increasingly stern. A seeming smile was still hung on Yi Qingtang's face. There's still 1 move left. Go ahead, senior brother Zhou, Yi Qingtang said with a smile. Zhou Chu scoffed. He suddenly walked forward and directed his energy, directly hitting Yi Qingtang without giving her any reaction time. A stern look flashed across her smiling eyes. At the moment when Zhou Chu dashed towards her, her hind foot backstepped a little, and she flipped her wrist. When Zhou Chu's punch was about to land, her hand suddenly held onto his fists, and using the impact of his punch, she threw him out directly. To others, all of this seemed like Zhou Chu slipped and was flung forward because his force was too violent. Zhou Chu put all his force into this punch, and if the punch had landed on Yi Qingtang, her bones would definitely be crushed. However, as Yi Qingtang flipped her wrist and dissolved the force, she directly transferred the energy onto Zhou Chu and sent him flying away. A large bang was heard. Zhou Chu was thrown onto the side of the arena with a heavy thud. The pain made his face pale and contorted in agony. The surrounding disciples were all dumbfounded. To them, the battle between Zhou Chu and Yi Qingtang simply looked like a joke. Yi Qingtang wanted to block Zhou Chu's attack, but unexpectedly, Zhou Chu did not stand stable himself and actually flew out. What the hell is this? Those new disciples that lost to Zhou Chu previously almost spat a mouthful of blood. Why did Zhou Chu not make so many mistakes when sparring with them? Why was there a series of problems when it became Yi Qingtang? Even if you thought that the little girl was good-looking, you should not be so obvious when going easy on her. Those who still hoped for Enchanting to end up worse than them were all disappointed. Zhou Chu stood up unsteadily and held on to his painful chest as a buzzing sound rang in his head. Senior brother Zhou, you're too kind. I'll accept these 4 bottles of she spirit pills. Enchanting beamed at the rather shabby-looking Zhou Chu. Before Zhou Chu managed to say something, she went straight to take the 4 bottles of she spirit pills that Zhou Chu had placed into her hands and kept it as though it was the logical thing to do. Zhou Chu watched with his own eyes as the 4 bottles of she spirit pills that he won previously was kept by Enchanting. Instantly, his face turned extremely ugly, and he was so depressed he almost threw up blood. He had not managed to react to what happened previously. He only felt that after Enchanting's touch, there seemed to be a force deviating the original track of his fist and he ended up throwing himself out. No one had expected that Enchanting could actually receive Zhou Chu's 3 moves. Accurately speaking, Enchanting did not even put in any effort. It was Zhou Chu who made successive mistakes which looked like he was intentionally going easy on her. No one knew that Zhou Chu was the one who was pissed to death. Chapter 139. Zhou Chu took out the 4 bottles of she spirit pills which he did not even plan to give Enchanting, yet unexpectedly, he lost the bait along with the fish. Under everyone's watch, he could only concede. Not bad, junior sister Yi, Zhou Chu said as his lips twitched, and his face darkened to a shocking shade. In the outer sect, there were quite a few disciples who entered after Zhou Chu and once suffered a loss on this arena. Seeing as to how Zhou Chu lost 4 bottles of she spirit pills at one go, they were very satisfied as well. Simply not wanting to remain there any longer, Zhou Chu turned around and left with a dark face. Enchanting looked at the 4 bottles of she spirit pills that she gained, and her lips curled up. She walked down the arena and to Yunshu's side, stuffing the 4 bottles that she won from Zhou Chu into Yunshu's hands. What are you doing, junior sister? Yunshu asked, confused. He had not recovered from the shock of Enchanting's victory and could not help but be a little muddle-headed when he saw 4 bottles of elixirs being stuffed into his hands in the blink of an eye. I borrowed your 2 bottles of elixirs to go up the arena. Now that I've won, I'm just returning them to you with interest, Enchanting beamed. This action fell into many eyes. Previously, quite a number of people were still curious where Enchanting got 2 additional bottles of she spirit pills from, and they finally understood now. No, I didn't go up the arena, and it's natural for you to keep this elixir yourself. I'll just take back my 2 original bottles. Yunshu returned to his senses and was unwilling to gain such benefits without putting any effort. Moreover, he knew that Enchanting's spirit root was not considered good and needed the she spirit pills more than him. Thus, he was unwilling to share a portion of her winnings. If senior brother Yun doesn't accept, then I'll not find you for help in the future, Enchanting purposely replied in a perplexed tone. Yunshu opened his mouth and looked at Enchanting's wronged expression, not knowing what to do, and could only forcefully accept it. Thank you then, junior sister. In Lu Ziyuan's eyes, the interaction between Yunshu and Enchanting was extremely glaring. Initially, Lu Xiuan was still mocking Yunshu for giving Enchanting his elixirs as it would allow him to establish a greater gap between him and Yunshu within a month. Lu Xiuan obtained an additional bottle from Zhou Chu and had 3 bottles of she spirit pills in total while Yunshu would have none. Yet, unexpectedly, not only were the 2 bottles of she spirit pills that Yunshu gave out returned to him, he even got 2 additional bottles from Enchanting. In the end, it was Lu Xiuan who had 1 less bottle than Yunshu instead. All his previous calculations fell out, and Lu Xiuan almost choked to death. The sarcasm on his face vanished into thin air immediately, and his expression was even darker than Zhou Chu, who left hurriedly. Without saying anything, he turned around and left, unwilling to spare both Yi Qingtang and Yun Shu another look. Yi Qingtang is indeed smart. Yun Shu seems to be the young master of Lu Yun family clan, and this act cozied up to him. She is really scheming. Most people were more or less unhappy as they saw that Yi Qingtang and Yun Shu gained 2 additional bottles of Shi spirit pills without doing anything. To them, it was obviously best to use the Shi spirit pills for themselves. However, Yun Shu's family background was outstanding and was indeed a person that one would want to win over. Thus, they had already conjectured the motive of Yi Qingtang's act. Yi Qingtang was not at all bothered by this. What had her kindness to a person got anything to do with their identity or background? It was simply her liking only. After observing from a side all along and witnessing the outcome of the competition, Lin Long showed a worried expression, though she silently left without saying anything. Chapter 140, Shi Spirit Pill was a good item, and obviously, the more of it, the better. However, Yi Qingtang would never maltreat those who had helped her in her previous life. Only she, who had experienced hell before, would understand vividly how precious the kindness of a timely assistance was. The Sword faction was the main faction in the Outer Sect, and the Outer Sect warden was to teach Xianling sect's basic swordplays. After the warden taught the lessons, the disciples were to cultivate themselves, and the extent of improvement was all dependent on their own talent and diligence. In her previous life, Yi Qingtang stayed in the Outer Sect for many years, thus, she was already extremely familiar with the content of the lessons as if they were on the back of her hand. She was very clear that although the things taught in the Outer Sect were profound when compared to places outside sects, the real elite skills were concentrated in the Inner Sect. And only by entering the Inner Sect would one be able to reach higher attainment and cultivate more powerful skills. After experiencing everything in her past life, Yi Qingtang would not be negligent. The moment she finished listening to the lesson, she immediately headed for the training hall to practice her swordplay. Her current body was in a far better condition than the one in her previous life where she had to go through countless hardships and tribulations. Given her current condition, it was impossible for her to use the many cultivation techniques that she learned in her previous life. Moreover, she did not have a spirit root in the previous life and was utterly helpless at cultivations that used the spirit root. It could be said that she was completely a stranger to this aspect. Thus, she had to cultivate even more diligently in this lifetime. However, after a few days of cultivation, Yi Qingtang did not plod on forcefully as well. To become powerful in the sect, one could not rely only on the lessons but had to personally fight for it. This method was to use the Xianming points. Xianming points could be exchanged for things to upgrade oneself like elixirs, martial technique scrolls, and usage of popular cultivation spots. Additionally, there was only one way of obtaining the points. That was by doing missions. The sect would appoint respective disciples at certain times to complete sect-appointed missions. After completing the mission, one would obtain the respective Xianming points. However, disciples who had just entered the sect for less than a month like Yi Qingtang would not be appointed to complete missions. Yi Qingtang really needed Xianming points, as she knew how important it was to upgrade herself. Hence, her goal was locked down. You want to go to the rewards pavilion? Yun Shu was a little stunned when he heard of Yi Qingtang's plan. The rewards pavilion would distribute some missions which were not forced on the disciples but completely based on the disciples' wish. If they wanted to earn Xianming points, they could accept the missions where there would be no punishment should they fail, and they were able to gain Xianming points should they succeed. According to the differing levels of difficulty, the reward of Xianming points varied. Simple missions would have lesser rewards, and one person could complete it independently, while higher difficulty missions would require disciples to form a group by themselves and complete it through teamwork. Previously, the Outer Sect elder had mentioned this, but no one took it to heart. The new disciples were still busy familiarizing themselves with everything in the outer sect then and did not have the energy to struggle with missions. Is it because you do not have enough she spirit pills already? I still have some with me, how about you take it first? Yun Shu did not completely approve of Yi Qingtang's strategy. These few days, he could tell that Yi Qingtang was more hardworking than any other disciple and felt her desire to become powerful. However, Yi Qingtang shook her head with a smile. Chapter 141, I still have she spirit pills. I just want to take a look there only, Yi Qingtang told a white lie, as she could tell that Yun Shu was very worried. Other disciples were still smug over obtaining she spirit pills, but Yi Qingtang was clearer than anyone that relying only on the she spirit pills was far from enough to stand out in the outer sect. At that point of time, Yi Yu had already become Yun Shao's sect master's disciple, and if Yi Qingtang was to progress so slowly, the gap between her and Yi Yu would only become bigger. At most a year. 1 year later, Yi Qingtang must pass the inner sect assessment, and only then would she be able to close the gap between her and Yi Yu. Really? Yun Shu looked at his junior sister, rather unconvinced. Yi Qingtang laughed innocently. Senior brother Yun, you think too highly of me already. What missions do you think I'll be able to take on given my current abilities? Yun Shu thought so as well and did not ask anything further. Since he still had to cultivate his swordplay, he did not accompany Yi Qingtang to the rewards pavilion. Yi Qingtang went to the outer sect's rewards pavilion alone. The outer sect's rewards pavilion was very broad and had 3 floors in total. All sorts of rewarding missions were distributed mostly on the first floor while portraits of tyrants on the assassination roll was pasted all over the second floor. It was still considered early when Yi Qingtang came, and there were not many people in the rewards pavilion. Amongst those who came to either select missions or submit their completed missions on the 3rd floor, none of them noticed Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang took a look on the 1st floor. There were plenty of rewarding missions here, and one would not be able to finish browsing them even after a day. The missions in the rewards pavilion consisted of all kinds of strange things. From killing demonic beasts to seeking treasures, almost anything and everything was there. The lower corner of each mission indicated the number of Xianming points that would be awarded upon completion. Yi Qingtang picked a few missions which gave the highest rewards. Those few were particularly difficult, and the chance of succeeding would still be very low even with hundreds of elite disciples. Some missions with small rewards were suitable for one to complete independently, and Yi Qingtang took a look at them as well, but after weighing her options, she felt that it was not worth it. Most of those missions were quite some distance away from Xianling's sect. Although they had a low level of difficulty and were not dangerous, after she took into account the distance to and fro, it would take at least half a month's time. Moreover, the number of Xianming points awarded were in single digits, so it was extremely not worthwhile. In the outer sect, exchanging a bottle of Shi spirit pills already required 15 Xianming points. Even if Yi Qingtang did solo missions non-stop for a month, she would only be able to exchange for 1 bottle at most to even hold up her cultivation. The cost and benefit were simply not proportional. In reality, solo missions were not only the ones on the 1st floor. On the 2nd floor, mouth-watering number of Xianming points were stated on the bottom of every portrait on the huge assassination roll. The least was hundreds of points while the higher rewarding ones gave over thousands of points. However, those were not what the current Yi Qingtang could complete. Everyone on the assassination roll were extremely evil and violent. Furthermore, their skills surpassed everyone, and they had committed innumerable murders. Moreover, those people's whereabouts were not fixed, and it was not an easy thing to locate them. Such missions on the assassination roll were mostly accepted by the inner sect disciples, as the outer sect disciples simply were not powerful enough to deal with any one person on the assassination roll. After searching for a long time, Enchanting only saw one mission to kill a level 4 demonic beast where the location was rather far, and the number of points awarded was barely a 2-digit number. When Enchanting was about to calculate whether it was worth it or not, a figure suddenly appeared outside the entrance of the rewards pavilion. Chapter 142. Zhou Chu had been in a terribly foul mood these few days. After losing 4 bottles of she spirit pills to Enchanting in front of everyone, he was ridiculed by quite a few senior and junior brothers. In the many years that he set up the arena, it was still Zhou Chu's first time losing big time to a new disciple. Losing 4 bottles of she spirit pills at once plus the bottle he gave Lu Xiuwen, he barely profited from the new disciples this year. How were the additional 2 to 3 bottles enough for him to make it through this year? Zhou Chu knew that his natural endowment was not outstanding enough, thus, he squeezed his brain juice to use dishonest means and obtain she spirit pills in order to support himself in ranking in the first 1,000 in the outer sect. However, he did not expect to meet such a cursed Enchanting this year who messed up all his plans. Helpless, Zhou Chu could only head to the rewards pavilion in search of suitable missions for him to exchange for a few bottles of she spirit pills in order to obtain enough spirit pills to support his cultivation. However, never in a million years would Zhou Chu expect that the moment he stepped into the rewards pavilion, he would actually see Enchanting. All the grievance from these few days flooded his mind immediately, and a dangerous look flashed across his eyes. What a coincidence, junior sister Yi. I didn't expect to run into you here. Enchanting heard this and turned around immediately. Looking up, she saw that a devious-looking Zhou Chu had already stood behind her. Senior brother Zhou, Enchanting addressed generously. Zhou Chu clenched his teeth secretly and was even more annoyed when he looked at an unafraid Enchanting. If it were not for Enchanting, how would he have lost so many she spirit pills? How would he, then, be here to search for missions? A plan suddenly formed in his mind, and he laughed while looking at Enchanting. Good thing you're here, junior sister Yi. I was going to look for you just now. You're looking for me. Enchanting raised her brows and continued. Is there anything you need me for? Zhou Chu laughed. Of course, there is a reason why I wanted to look for you. You performed pretty well on the arena a few days ago, and I am very grateful. However, junior sister Yi seemed to forget something, thus, I am here to remind you. Oh. What did I forget? Enchanting looked at Zhou Chu calmly. A sharp, cold light shone across Zhou Chu's eyes though he wore a solemn expression. I started the arena that day to be able to learn from fellow disciples and allowed new disciples like you all to participate since you all were interested. However, I personally guided you so painstakingly. Did you forget that you should give me some remuneration? Enchanting narrowed her eyes. She was aware that Zhou Chu was narrow-minded but did not think that. She had seen a shameless person before but had never seen such a shameless person. Zhou Chu was not resigned to the fact that she won the she spirit pills and actually thought of such an excuse to get some back. Remuneration. I don't remember senior brother saying about any remuneration, Enchanting said calmly. Suddenly, Zhou Chu's face darkened, and the smile on his face slowly faded. He scoffed, Junior sister Yi, you just entered our sect and may still be unclear of the sect's rules. When an old disciple gives guidance to a new disciple, remuneration is required. It is still so even if this were to travel into the years of the wardens. Chapter 143. There was indeed such a rule in all the sects. Should new disciples ask senior brothers and sisters for guidance, they could set a certain remuneration in exchange for a little teaching. However, how was Zhou Chu giving guidance? It was clearly an arena he set up, yet he shamelessly worded it so nicely now. Ultimately, He found such an excuse only because he was frustrated over losing the she spirit pills to Enchanting. At that point, there were significantly fewer people in the rewards pavilion. In the wide first floor, only Enchanting and Zhou Chu remained. With the warden in charge of the missions currently on the third floor, no one could say anything even if Zhou Chu were to act arrogantly. Junior Sister Yi, I gave you guidance so kindly. It cannot be that you don't even know about such manners. Enchanting narrowed her eyes, and a smile extended on her lips. Lifting her chin slightly, she swept a look across Zhou Chu's greedy face and said, I wonder what kind of remuneration does senior brother Zhou want? Zhou Chu was rather satisfied at Enchanting's sensibility and said immediately, You are a new disciple and don't have anything else. I showed you the directions for 3 moves, and according to our initial betting chip on the arena, each move is worth 4 bottles of she spirit pills. I gave you guidance for 3 moves, so logically, you should give me 12 bottles of she spirit pills. 12 bottles of she spirit pills? Zhou Chu really had a large appetite. Enchanting scoffed, 12 bottles of she spirit pills. Are you joking, senior brother Zhou? How would I have 12 bottles of she spirit pills? Zhou Chu replied, with the 4 bottles that you took out previously plus the ones I gave you, that will be 8 bottles. I am also not a heartless person. You just need to return me 7 bottles first, and you can return the remaining 5 bottles over 5 months with 1 bottle per month. Rest assured, I will leave 1 bottle for you to use yourself every month. Zhou Chu feigned magnanimous as though leaving 1 bottle for Enchanting every month was already the greatest favor. The smile on Enchanting's lips deepened, though the smile never reached her eyes. An evil expression faintly radiated in her eyes. Senior brother Zhou, I am not an insensible person. However, if you want remuneration, you should show me some real abilities at the bare minimum. With just that little skill where I received the 3 moves on the arena, I'm afraid I'm unwilling to give you any. Zhou Chu initially thought that Enchanting would obey wisely and did not think that she would twist her words. The smile on his face stiffened, and his sinister eyes narrowed. Know what is good for you, Enchanting. I can't even be bothered and others want me to give them guidance for even a move. Now that you made such a huge gain, you still want to deny it. As he said, he clenched his fists which were hanging by his side, making a crisp sound which seemed like a threaten. Enchanting glanced over Zhou Chu's fist, and her eyes turned cold. Senior brother Zhou, courtesy demands reciprocity. If you can receive 3 moves from me, I'll acknowledge your previous guidance. Not only will I pay you the remuneration for the previous 3 moves, but I'll also add on another 12 bottles. How about it? Enchanting said smilingly. Zhou Chu was taken aback instantly. The initial dissatisfaction was replaced by shock at this instant. Receive 3 moves from her. Was Enchanting a fool? At that instant, Zhou Chu really wanted to laugh. He merely wanted to get back what was his with interest and asked for 12 bottles of she spirit pills. How would he have thought that Enchanting actually sought death herself and doubled the number of she spirit pills? Chapter 144, No problem, Zhou Chu agreed immediately. He mocked Enchanting for being foolish in his heart. Did she really think that she was more powerful than him now just because she got lucky and received his 3 moves? Zhou Chu's ranking as the first 1000 in the outer sect was not fake. He was confident in sparring with new disciples with green spirit roots like Lu Xiuwen, much less a red spirit root disciple like Enchanting. A cold murderous look flashed across Enchanting's eyes as she saw Zhou Chu's confident expression. Looking down slightly, she hid away all emotion in her eyes. Then, may senior brother Zhou receive my moves. At that point, the rewards pavilion was empty, and they had no other scruple while exchanging blows. Zhou Chu was full of confidence, and the arrogance in his eyes could not be hidden at all. He waved to Yi Qingtang nonchalantly and said, "Come on, junior sister Yi." Yi Qingtang's lips curled up. In the very next instant when Zhou Chu finished his sentence, she suddenly disappeared before Zhou Chu's eyes. Suddenly, Zhou Chu lost sight of Yi Qingtang, and the arrogant smile on Zhou Chu's face froze instantly. In the next second, Yi Qingtang suddenly appeared behind Zhou Chu, and a cold light flashed across the bottom of her eyes. At that very moment, Yi Qingtang suddenly raised her leg, and with a jump, she directly landed a heavy kick on Zhou Chu's temple. Zhou Chu simply had no time to react and only felt an extreme pain surging from within his brain. Under this pain, his tough physique could not withstand that blow, and he was kicked dumb. His mind buzzed, and his vision was blurred, rendering him unable to see anything. "Senior brother Zhou, this is the first move." Yi Qingtang's voice sounded like that of a devil's which traveled from behind him. Zhou Chu's head seemed as though it was going to explode. The force in that kick just now was not at all inferior to any boxing cultivators and completely not what a 15-year-old girl should possess. However, this was not the end yet. Only one move was over in the agreed 3 moves. Yi Qingtang stood still and looked at Zhou Chu hugging his head without any pity. Suddenly, she took a step forward. Zhou Chu seemed to sense something at that point and straightened himself, wanting to block Yi Qingtang's oncoming attack with his fists. However, Yi Qingtang did not launch a sudden attack this time and merely smiled as she looked at Zhou Chu's miserable look. Zhou Chu was not born gifted, yet he forcefully developed himself to where he was today. Clearly, he was not someone that could be easily bullied. If Yi Qingtang wanted to teach him a lesson, it must obviously be under the pretext of ensuring her own safety. "Senior brother Zhou, the second move is next," Yi Qingtang said with a slight smile. Zhou Chu could not be bothered with the ringing pain in his brain and forced himself to raise his head, wanting to catch Yi Qingtang in action. However, he was still a step slower. The moment he looked up, Yi Qingtang rushed to his front at the speed of light, and her tiny figure appeared right in front of him directly. Zhou Chu only managed to look down at Yi Qingtang's outstanding features. What entered his eyes was a smile, with indescribable evilness, which bloomed on her face. It was also at the moment Yi Qingtang smiled when she gave a flying kick right across which violently landed on Zhou Chu's lower jaw. This kick had Zhou Chu flying out immediately. Chapter 145. Zhou Chu's large and strong frame fell on the ground with a heavy thud. The 2 successive kicks were all aimed at his brain. Even for Zhou Chu, a fit and healthy person who was extremely able to withstand blows, he was already dizzy from the 2 kicks. Even if his body was as hard as metal, it was impossible to cultivate until his head became as hard as steel. Zhou Chu got up with difficulty, and the pain in his head intensified. Never would he have dreamt that Yi Qingtang was so swift in her attacks and that she had such a fierce force. How was this level of skill what a new disciple who just entered the sect should have? At that instant, Zhou Chu only wanted to give the disciple who said that Yi Qingtang had a red spirit root a beating. This was the skill of a bloody red spirit root. Where the hell did this find a 15-year-old with a red spirit root who could hit him up so easily come from? If it was said that Zhou Chu was overflowing with confidence when he accepted Yi Qingtang's request for sparring, then at that point in time, that confidence was long crushed into pieces by Yi Qingtang's 2 kicks. Wait a while," Zhou Chu hurriedly said after sensing that something was not right. It was a pity that Yi Qingtang did not intend on letting Zhou Chu off, just like Zhou Chu never intended to let any new disciple on the arena off. Zhou Chu wanted to make a slight adjustment, but Yi Qingtang appeared right before him once again. "Junior sister Yi, wait a while." Zhou Chu frowned and said with a feigned discomfort. Just when he thought Enchanting was attracted by his words, he fiercely punched at the nearing Enchanting with a fist full of force. However, this punch did not touch Enchanting at all. The fist that Zhou Chu struck out was easily avoided by Enchanting, who was beaming at him while holding onto his wrist tightly. Zhou Chu's expression changed drastically. "Senior brother Zhou, this will be the last move already." A devilish grin emerged on Enchanting's beautiful face. She suddenly lifted another hand and placed it on Zhou Chu's fist, locking them tightly. Using her elbow as support, she turned on her heel swiftly and pulled Zhou Chu by the wrist, throwing him over her shoulders and heavily onto the ground. A loud bang, mixed with Zhou Chu's miserable cry, reverberated throughout the first floor of the rewards pavilion. This fall made Zhou Chu spit out blood immediately. It was as though the bones all over his body were crushed by someone so much so that he was too in pain to even have the energy to crawl up. 3 moves were over. Rather than receiving 3 moves, Zhou Chu did not even have the ability to dodge them. Enchanting stood high and tall and cast a cold look down at Zhou Chu, who was sprawled on the floor, just like how Zhou Chu stood on the arena and hit her until she spat blood in her previous life. Everything that happened in her previous life would not be the same again in this lifetime. Enchanting stepped on Zhou Chu's chest, and an evil grin hung on the corner of her lips. "Zhou Chu, are you even qualified to give me guidance with such little abilities?" The pain was so excruciating that Zhou Chu felt dizzy. With blood flowing out from the corner of his mouth and his chest about to be ripped open from Enchanting's step on it, he did not even have any energy to speak. After appreciating Zhou Chu's miserable look, Enchanting was about to turn and leave. Yet, unexpectedly, just when she turned around and was prepared to leave the rewards pavilion, she suddenly found 2 figures stood outside the main entrance of the rewards pavilion from God knows when. It was a pair of young men who were taken aback. They looked in shock at Enchanting, who was radiating devilishness, and Zhou Chu, who was stepped under her foot. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.